Okay, we are back and picking up on page 4 of the outline for the Series 63, and we're still in the definitions, will be for a while, okay? But again, it's very, very critical for you to know those definitions. We just talked about a broker-dealer, and we talked about the exclusions and the exemptions. One of those that was excluded from the definition of a broker-dealer is the agent. We said in the first module that the way you can tell the broker-dealer is a non-natural person. However, the agent is going to have a pulse. They're going to breathe, okay? So if it's breathing, then it may be an agent. That's an individual that's employed by a broker-dealer or an issuer to sell securities. Yes, there are some issuers that will sell securities directly to the public. Those folks, under certain circumstances, have to be registered as agents. Remember, though, that an agent, first of all, is there. It tells me, a couple, 3 things. It tells me, first of all, that it is, in fact, a natural person. And secondly, that it does work for a broker-dealer or an issuer. The third thing, what's it doing? What's that person doing? That person is actually doing transactions in securities. Okay, not giving investment advice. Totally different. Okay, so it excludes. Okay, here we go. Very important. These are the ones that just does not apply. Excludes those representing the issuer with regard to exempt securities or exempt transactions. Unfortunately, that's some of the wording you're going to see. All right? Or those who sell to existing employees, partners, etc., without compensation. Let's see how this works, okay? Here's the deal. I have an issuer, okay? And they have a big old box of securities right here that they need to sell to the public. Somebody's got to do that. So here is a representative of the issuer, and he takes these and sells them to the public. Now the question is this guy or gal, is that an agent? Well, it depends. See, the thing is that let's say that these are municipal bonds. If they're municipal bonds we're going to find out a little bit later are exempt securities. Therefore, no. But what if, draw it a little bit differently, okay? There's the box of securities, and it's just regular stock. This is Bob's Dry Cleaners, okay? And Bob's Dry Cleaners is just a regular corporation. Here's Bob. And what he's going to do is he's not going to sell directly to the public. He's going to sell to a broker-dealer that's going to be acting as an investment banking firm for him. And he's going to then, they're going to turn around and resell to the public. Okay? Is Bob an agent? No. It's not because of the nature of the stuff. It's because we're going to find out later that a transaction between an issuer and the underwriter, that is an exempt transaction. So therefore Bob is excluded from the definition of an agent. Now what about this guy over here? It's a non-exempt security. This is a non-exempt transaction. And this is not the issuer, that's the broker-dealer. This person's going to have to register. All right? Now let's take scenario 3. You answer an ad in the paper. This is Bob's Dry Cleaner, needs an employee. Here's Bob. Here's you. There's a box of securities. Bob says, here you go. Here's a whole bunch of paperwork on the insurance, on the retirement plan, okay. And oh, by the way, we have an employee stock purchase plan. Do you want to participate? What did Bob just do? Bob just solicited the purchase of securities, the sale of securities from the issuer to the person, right? But now, here's the question. Does Bob get any special compensation if you say, well, yeah? Or does he get penalized if you say, yeah, I don't think so? If there's none of that, then Bob is not an agent, does not have to register, because it's just part of his job. Now you start paying Bob a commission, all bets are off. What has Bob just done in that case? Bob has totally redefined his job. He's no longer a guy who runs a dry cleaning business. He is a guy who sells securities for a living. Okay? So he loses that exclusion if he gets paid a commission. Commissions just blow the whole thing out of the water. I don't care what the thing is or what water we're talking about, okay? So anyway, like I say, that's the situation here. But if that's just part of his job, now you'll see this two ways, okay? One is Bob an agent? No commission? No, he's not. The second thing is, who is most likely to sell securities to employees or to other people under the direction of the issuer without receiving a commission? Well, it's Bob. He's an officer of the company. Okay, in this case, he's the owner. But yeah, so that's who's most likely to do it. And I've seen that question both ways. So frontwards or backwards, be prepared for that question. All right? Okay, now, let me ask you this. Here's Bob. There's his box of securities. And what he wants to do is that he wants to make an offering of stock in Bob's Dry Cleaners directly to the public. And this is going to be like, a whole bunch of people, at least 100, 150, 200, maybe 500 people. Okay? Does Bob have to register? Yes. Yes, because the thing is, Bob is selling non-exempt securities in a non-exempt transaction, and therefore he would have to register, even though he represents the issuer rather than a broker-dealer. In fact, I taught this class for a company that did exactly that. And all of their salespeople for the securities, they all had to get the Series 63 so that they could sell those securities to people, to the general public. Okay? So it happens. All right? But again, you're not going to see that on a national basis. Think small. You're going to see it on a local or a state level. Okay? So anyway, those are the agents and the situations we've got where I sell exempt securities or in an exempt transaction or basically in the thrift plan. But this, Bob would have to register, this last one. Okay, so let's see. It also excludes employees whose only duties are clerical or administrative because they're not directly involved in the actual transactions themselves. They may keep track of the transactions, but there's a lot of difference between keeping track of a transaction and actually being involved in the trading of stuff and money. An investment advisor then. Again, we said to keep the broker-dealer separate from the investment advisor. There's one similarity here. The investment advisor is the business, just like the broker-dealer is the business. The agent is the real live person on the broker-dealer side. The investment advisor representative is the real live person on the investment advisory side. So there is that parallel, but like I say, two different entities. So, and it's in quotes because this is the wording that you get, okay? It's any person who, there's the first leg of the stool, for compensation, okay? And I don't care if it's cash or something else of value. If it's compensation, it's compensation. Engages in the business, okay? In fact, that's the second part. That's my business, is to do this. To do what? To advise others as to the value of securities, or as part of a regular business, issues out analyses or reports concerning securities. So that's my business. Like I say, that's it, and that's what I get paid for. All right? So it specifically includes financial planners, and then representatives of sports figures, other celebrities, because once I negotiate that $60 million contract or whatever it is, I'm going to tell them how to invest it. I'm giving advice on securities for compensation. That's my business. So I meet all those criteria. Exclusions, our old buddy, these just don't meet the criteria. Are we surprised by the first one? Banks? No. Banks are no, are not, cannot be, are excluded from, are not included in. Professionals. Now you've got the LATE acronym. Okay, that's L-A-T-E. That's lawyers, accountants, teachers, and engineers. Lawyers, accountants, teachers, and engineers. As long as the investment advice that they give is incidental to the practice of law, the practice of accounting, the teaching that they do, or the engineering work that they do. And so one of the examples that I like to give, I'm thinking about investing in a real estate program. And so, here in Tulsa, we've got clay soils that a lot of foundations fail. Leads to a lot of structural problems. So I want to call my buddy who's a structural engineer and I say, hey, look, can you go over and look at those properties for me and see, because I'm thinking about investing and this is the pool of properties that they're going to buy. So he goes around, he does all of his studies, he hands me the report along with a bill and he says, here's the bill for your engineering report. And oh, by the way, you might want to read that back page. The back page says either, there are no significant problems at all. From an engineering point of view, just go ahead. Feel free to do. It looks like good to me. Or it could say, Dan, there are so many issues with these structures. Big, huge issues. It's going to eat your lunch if you invest in this thing. Just the structural problems that you're going to encounter. That's investment advice. But what did he bill me for? He billed me for the engineering report. Therefore, that investment advice is incidental. If he'd had it in a separate report, and then he'd said, here's the bill for the engineering, and if you want to know what the conclusion is, it's going to cost you another $100, all of a sudden, boom, what's his business? What's he doing? He's charging for it, getting paid for it, right? So he's helped. Or if he has, like an accountant, puts out an ad that says, superior accounting practice, accurate, fast, complete, and oh, by the way, a pretty good investment advisor too. If I say I'm an investment advisor, I am one. If I hold myself out to the public, what am I doing? I'm saying I'm in that business and I'll give you that advice and I'll charge you for it. There are the three legs to the stool. All right. But, like I say, if it's incidental to my legal practice, my accounting practice, my teaching, my engineering work, then I'm excluded from the definition. Broker-dealers share really about the same exclusion because broker-dealers give investment advice every day of the week. But remember, we take broker-dealers and separate them out from investment advisors because broker-dealers affect transactions in securities. Why do they give investment advice? It's to allow themselves to get paid commissions and charge those markups and markdowns. All right? So it's incidental to their work of affecting transactions in securities. Now, an accountant can step out from underneath that umbrella of exclusion by either holding himself out to the public as an investment advisor or having separate billing for it. By the same token, a broker-dealer being under the same umbrella can step out from underneath that same umbrella by charging a wrap fee. That's a fee that's asset-based. We'll charge you X% of your assets to manage that. And oh, by the way, we're not even going to charge any commissions on the transactions. What's happened? We've made our primary business the dispensing of investment advice, and the transactions support that. So we've stepped out from underneath that umbrella of exclusion by charging the wrap fee. Okay. Publishers of any type, unless they give advice specific to the needs of the subscriber. That's wording that's in the Act. Okay? Which, if I can take just a real short little side trip, this is actually a testing method of last resort, but it works well on the Series 63. Because this is so law intensive, if you can't decide, a good candidate is the longest answer. Because what are they going to do? They're going to lift wording right out of the Act, right out of the template for the Act, and that Act was written by attorneys, and attorneys, they don't say that you can have a margin account. They say that this account can lend, borrow, and hypothecate. They're paid by the syllable, I think, Mm-hmm. So if it's wordy, then chances are it's lifted out of the law. If it's lifted out of the law, chances are it's the correct answer. But use that as a tool of last resort, okay? All right. So anyway, but that's it. So publishers of any type, unless if they give advice specific to the needs of the subscribers, then they're an investment advisor. But barring that, then the newspaper, the magazine, what have you, those are excluded. An investment advisory representative, or IAR, just like the agent is excluded, so the IAR is excluded. It's exactly the same thing. And a federal covered advisor, which we'll talk about those details now, but what I'm going to do for right now, is that I'm going to say that this gets back to thinking small. Because if you have big nationwide, whatever it is that we're talking about, then the federal government is going to step in and take the lead on that. We're looking at the local, whether it's businesses, whether it's investment advisors, whether it's broker-dealers, okay? Think locally. It's going to help you out a whole lot. Okay, so who are the folks who are definitely, without a doubt, investment advisors, but they're exempt from registration in this state? All right? No place of business in this state, and that looks familiar, doesn't it? It's exactly the same thing that we saw. So my wife and I like to go up to Vermont for Christmas. I'm an investment advisor in the state of Oklahoma. Am I an investment advisor in Vermont? I don't know. Let's check it out. Do I have an office up there? I don't? So far, so good. Just like with the broker-dealer, if I rent the space, before the ink dries on the lease, I'm an investment advisor up there. I'll need to register, okay? But I don't have any office up there. So far, so good. Who do I do business with up there? Those non-public financial institutions, other investment advisors, broker-dealers, banks, insurance companies, investment companies. Okay? If those are my only customers in the state of Vermont, then I'm still exempt from registration in the state of Vermont. But now look, here's a big, big difference. Big difference. You think you're going to get tested on it? Now I'm going to bet my money on it, okay? If a broker-dealer has one, count them, one, retail customer in a state, if they keep that customer, they got to register in that state. But what if the guy who runs the bed and breakfast up there that we go to, what if he gives me a call, says, Dan, I really would like for you to manage my account. I'd like for you to do a financial plan for me. And he's the only guy in the state of Vermont that I do business with. And do I need to register up there? No, because I'm under the de minimis exemption. I can have up to 5 folks up there as long as I don't hold myself out as being an investment advisor. If I run an ad in the newspaper there in Bennington, guess what? I'm saying I am. I am. I need to register. But if I don't hold myself out, okay, the guy just calls up because he knows me, we've talked, whatever. I didn't ask him for business. It just kind of floated down the stream and all of a sudden, boom, there it is. I can have 5 of those folks, but that's it. That's a de minimis exemption. There is no such exemption on the broker-dealer side. That's one of the reasons why you have to separate out the broker-dealers from the investment advisors, because there are different sets of rules, okay? And then an investment advisory representative or an IAR, that's folks. They have breath, they have a pulse. Non-clerical or administrative affiliates of the investment advisor. Clerical, they're not. Person who answers the phone, does the typing, does the filing, whatever, no. It's a person who makes recommendations, gives advice, manages portfolios, solicit advisory services. If they're a salesperson, they're involved in the dispensing of investment advice, or has supervisory duties over any of those activities. Okay, somehow or another, I get my fingers dirty in the investment advice. I therefore become an investment advisory representative. All right. So anyway, tell you what. Let's go ahead. We're still in these definitions, but they're so important. But this is kind of a natural breaking point. I don't like to run these videos too long for you. So let's go ahead and take a break here, and then we'll come back and we'll pick back up with the definitions and talk about federal covered advisors.